I'd be grateful if we didn't have the level of interjection. Question number 5, Denise Roche.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Transport and asks, does he stand by his statement that Auckland must have a transport system that meets the demands of its growing population, and we are committed to working with the Auckland Council to help make sure Auckland succeeds?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr. Speaker, yes.
Supplementary question, Denise Roche.
Why won't he invest in a congestion-free network in Auckland, one that costs less than his current plan and one that will save Aucklanders from rate and levy hikes?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr. Speaker, I'd love to see such a plan.
Does he...
Order. Supplementary. Order. Supplementary question, Denise Roche.
Thank you, sir. Does he agree that if the government adjusted its transport funding priorities in Auckland, the new transport levies on households and businesses announced today would not be necessary?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not responsible for the transport levies. I think what is important from the government's perspective is that Auckland has a strong transport strategy in place, and that's certainly the case before we can start to think about how we'll fund that.
Supplementary question, Denise Roche.
Why is he proposing to wait 2 more elections before committing to build the City Rail Link, the most critical missing piece of Auckland's transport infrastructure?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr. Speaker, well, in fact, we brought that project forward by a decade. 2020. We're committed to a business case of it in 2017 and then getting on with preparation and planning for making it happen. I think it's worth noting we spend $1 billion a year on transport in Auckland. We spent $1.6 billion on the Metropolitan Rail and electrification of that. That's $1.6 billion more on public transport than the Green Party ever has. We've done a host of projects in Auckland because we back that city. We'll continue to do so.
Supplementary question, Denise Roche.
Will he commit to providing new funding in this year's budget to build the City Rail Link, given the latest rail patronage statistics showing growth so strong that it will reach his own patronage target 3 years ahead of schedule in 2017?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr. Speaker, it's not for me to pre-announce the budget and decisions, and that what I certainly can say is that we're always interested in ways to reduce congestion in Auckland and ways to improve public transport. And in fact, what we've seen so far in terms of Mayor Brown's preferred plan in Auckland doesn't do that sufficiently into the 2030s and 40s. We want to work with him, with the Council and with Auckland to make it a better, more optimal plan that does deal better with congestion and public transport.
Supplementary
question, Denise Roche.
Does it make sense to fast-track the expensive Puhoi to Wellsford motorway, a motorway with declining traffic volumes, at the cost of not investing in Auckland Rail, when nearly twice as many people used Auckland's rail network as used the state highway between Puhoi and Wellsford last year?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Speaker, these things are not either-ors. In fact, that highway is and will be a very significant, important economic game changer for the Northland region. It's important that it's a connected area to Auckland. I think it will also be good for Aucklanders to have that. I think we can do that, and we can also fund excellent public transport. And as I say, I'm committed to working with Auckland to make sure that happens.
Supplementary, sir.
Order. Supplementary question, Denise Roche.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will he support the Green Party plan for Auckland Transport that could meet the city's transport needs without new levies, simply by redirecting its transport budget away from wasteful spending on motorways towards a congestion-free network?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Well, Mr. Speaker, given that the national government has spent more on public transport in terms of electrification of rail, metropolitan rail, than the Green Party ever has, given that we have the most transformative urban cycleway package ever in the history of this country, I think it's highly unlikely that we'd back a Green Party plan.
Supplementary, sir.
Supplementary question, Denise Roche.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Is it fair to say his government is out of touch with the vast majority of Aucklanders who consistently say they want alternatives to motorways to escape congestion, while he consistently spends the vast majority of their taxes on motorways? How long will he leave Aucklanders waiting for the train?
Honourable Simon Bridges, either of those two questions.
I think the member has a very simplistic view of life. This is a government that, yes, does spend money on roads because that's still where 99% of commuters commute from. But we also have spent more than any other government on metropolitan rail in our largest centres. Indeed, the same is true in relation to urban cycleways. We're delivering a game-changing package in that for Auckland, in Wellington and in Christchurch.
I'll take the point of order first and then I'll take the supplementary question.
I seek leave to table a Generation Zero report, Fix Our City, that shows you can't fix Auckland's congestion by building more roads.
It's a Generation Zero report, the date of it, and then I'll put the leave.
March 2015.
On the basis it may not be easy for members to get, I'll put the leave sought to table that particular report. Is there any objection? There is none. It can be tabled. Supplementary question, David Seymour.
Has the Minister seen any modelling within the congestion-free network by Generation Zero and adopted by the Green Party of the effects it would have on trip times for trips that Aucklanders actually make in everyday life?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr Speaker, no, I think we know the answer to that, though, and indeed the same can be said of the Mayor's preferred plan, that despite the investment in public transport, it doesn't really make any difference in terms of congestion into the 2020s, 30s and 40s. And that's why I'm committed to working with the Mayor and with the Council to see a better plan that does deal with congestion and that does see a mode shift to public transport in a sensible, orderly and value for money way.
Supplementary question, David Seymour.
Will the Minister consider allowing Auckland Council to use time-sensitive congestion pricing on the motorway network to help raise revenue and ease congestion there?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
I think they're all interesting issues, demand management and pricing more broadly. They're not ones for today, and indeed I think a primary reason for that is we do not yet have a strategy with the right projects and the projects prioritised in the right way to justify such funding tools.
Question number 6, Simon O'Connor.